At 94, Clint Eastwood remains one of Hollywood's most reserved and self-contained figures, a man who has always preferred letting his work speak louder than commentary or public introspection. For decades, he avoided nostalgia, rarely revisited rivalries, and showed little interest in comparing himself to other legends. That is why his recent reflections on John Wayne carry such quiet significance. Eastwood never set out to rewrite history or challenge icons. Instead, he built his own legacy by choosing restraint over noise and patience over reaction. When he finally spoke about Wayne, it was not fueled by competition or resentment, but by distance earned through time. His words were calm, thoughtful, and revealing, offering insight not only into Wayne, but into how Eastwood understands masculinity, storytelling, and change. At an age when myths are usually frozen, Eastwood's reflections feel less like a revelation and more like closure, placing two towering figures into context rather than conflict. Growing up without illusion. Clint Eastwood was born Clinton Eastwood Jr. on May 31, 1930, in San Francisco during the economic hardship of the Great Depression. His childhood was shaped by instability, frequent moves, and the quiet demands of working-class survival, rather than comfort or certainty. His father worked physically demanding industrial jobs, while his mother held clerical positions, instilling in him a sense of self-reliance rather than entitlement. Eastwood learned early that nothing was promised and that security could disappear without warning. He gravitated toward music, teaching himself piano and trumpet, but also embraced physical labor, working as a lifeguard and taking manual jobs that reinforced discipline and independence. These early years did not romanticize struggle, they grounded him. Unlike many Hollywood figures, Eastwood never chased polish or refinement. His confidence came from endurance, not ambition, and from an understanding that strength often emerges from persistence rather than dominance. Becoming a different kind of cowboy. Eastwood's rise to prominence did not follow the traditional Hollywood path of grooming and approval. His early television success on Rawhide introduced him to audiences but offered little indication of the figure he would become. That transformation occurred in Italy under director Sergio Leone, where Eastwood's portrayal of the man with no name reshaped the Western genre. These characters were quiet, morally ambiguous, and stripped of heroic certainty. Unlike the clean-cut heroes of classic American Westerns, Eastwood's figures lived in moral gray areas, driven more by survival than righteousness. This approach stood in clear contrast to John Wayne's cinematic identity, which emphasized clarity, confidence, and moral absolutes. Eastwood never tried to replace Wayne's image. Instead, he quietly presented an alternative. The success of the Dollars trilogy demonstrated that audiences were ready for complexity, even in genres rooted in tradition, and Eastwood became the face of that shift. A new definition of authority. As Eastwood transitioned into American stardom, his work continued to challenge expectations rather than reinforce them. The Dirty Harry films further complicated his image, presenting authority figures who were controversial, flawed, and deeply unsettling to some viewers. Critics debated the implications of these roles, but audiences sensed something more honest beneath the surface. Eastwood's characters were not symbols of perfection. They reflected tension, uncertainty, and consequence. This again distinguished him from John Wayne, whose roles embodied certainty and national confidence. Wayne represented a reassuring moral center, while Eastwood explored restraint, doubt, and unresolved conflict. During these years, Eastwood did not publicly criticize Wayne, nor did he attempt to imitate him. Instead, he allowed time and choice to separate their legacies naturally, proving that influence does not require imitation. Directing with reflection, not reverence. Eastwood's evolution into directing marked a decisive shift in how he engaged with storytelling and genre. Films like Unforgiven did not celebrate violence or heroism, they questioned both. The film stripped away romantic mythology and replaced it with consequence, guilt, and moral reckoning. This was not an attack on earlier Westerns, but a response to them. Eastwood understood that John Wayne's era reflected an America seeking reassurance and certainty. His own work reflected a later generation, shaped by doubt, self-awareness, and cultural change. At 94, Eastwood openly acknowledged this distinction, noting that Wayne's characters often existed in absolutes, while his own were shaped by contradiction. He framed this not as superiority, but as evolution, emphasizing that cinema reflects the needs of its time rather than a single truth. Finally, speaking about John Wayne. When Eastwood finally addressed John Wayne directly, his tone was measured, respectful, and honest. He described Wayne as larger than life, recognizing the sheer power of his presence and the deep impact he had on American cinema. Eastwood made it clear that Wayne's influence was undeniable, even if their philosophies differed. He observed that Wayne's portrayals were rooted in clear moral lines, while his own leaned toward realism and uncertainty. Importantly, Eastwood emphasized that disagreement does not cancel respect. He admired Wayne's professionalism, discipline, and command of the screen, qualities that transcend ideology or era. Though the two were never close personally, Eastwood suggested that understanding existed without friendship. His comments replaced decades of speculation with clarity, offering context instead of controversy. Two eras, one shared genre. Eastwood's reflections highlight something larger than personal comparison. They reveal how genres evolve through contrast rather than rivalry. John Wayne represented an America confident in its identity, comfortable with heroes who embodied certainty and strength. Eastwood emerged during a period of questioning, when audiences were drawn to ambiguity, vulnerability, and flawed protagonists. Both men defined their eras without erasing each other. Eastwood openly acknowledged that his success was made possible in part because Wayne's legacy came first, creating the foundation he would later reinterpret. At 94, this acknowledgement carries no insecurity, only perspective. Cinema, in Eastwood's view, is a dialogue across generations, not a competition for dominance. A career shaped by time and choice. Beyond genre and legacy, Eastwood's life reflects careful navigation between achievement and personal complexity. His relationships and family life unfolded under the pressure of fame, often imperfectly and without pretense. He never presented himself as an ideal figure, only as a human one. These experiences informed his later films, which increasingly focused on aging, regret, accountability, and reconciliation. Eastwood's willingness to explore vulnerability, both on screen and in reflection, distinguishes him from many icons of his generation. Speaking about John Wayne at this stage of life was not about settling scores, but about honesty earned through longevity. His silence was never avoidance. It was patience. Legacy without rivalry. At 94, Clint Eastwood stands not as a challenger to those who came before him, but as a bridge between eras. His comments on John Wayne reflect maturity, restraint, and respect shaped by decades of thoughtful distance. Both men left indelible marks on cinema, not by opposing each other, but by responding to the worlds they lived in. Eastwood's legacy now rests not only in his films, but in his understanding that greatness does not require domination, only integrity. By finally speaking about Wayne, he offered something rare, a legend acknowledging another without myth, hostility, or ego. It is a reminder that history is richer when told honestly, and that the strongest voices are often the ones that wait until there is nothing left to prove.